Hi, we're Brian and Ann Bercht. We are founders of the Beyond Affairs website, and where you can find over 100 articles and about 50 podcasts that we've done. And we are creators of the Healing from Affairs online program, as well as Healing from Affairs live intensives for couples. We run a program called Take Your Life Back for betrayed wives only, and we also run a Man of Honor program for men that want to live with integrity. We've been doing this work of affair recovery for about 20 years now, and based on our own experience, which was now 21 years ago. So 21 years of monogamy in our marriage since a long time ago when Brian had an affair. And I always like to say this was never my dream when I was a little girl, like, oh, I want to grow up and be an affair recovery specialist. But sadly, there is a big need in the world. And what we want to talk to you today is we're looking for those couples who, as I often like to say, when I meet people, I'm like, when they ask you, what kind of work do you do? And I tell them, then I say, and you're never allowed to be my client, because we really want to see that you never have an affair in your marriage in the first place. And so we're going to talk about the 10 keys to affair prevention.
That's right. And so I'm just glad you tuned in and you were going to take some proactive steps to help so that you never become one of our clients, as Ann said. And so we're going to just share with you some things that we found necessary if you want to have a happy, healthy, and monogamous relationship. We just got 10 things we're going to share with you. Some things you probably already know, some things you'll probably learn. But we just find these are really key and helpful things. And so you want to lead off with,
Sure. Well, the number one thing that we have found for couples that have monogamy throughout their married life is that they understand that all marriages are vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that think an affair could never happen in our marriage, and if that's your belief, then you are actually more vulnerable. You will find that naivety does not actually lead to affair prevention. Instead, monogamous couples are ones that realize that we're all humans and we are all capable of falling, and therefore we better guard our marriage, and most importantly, guard our hearts and put hedges of protection around us, and be very careful about how we handle ourselves with the opposite sex. Don't underestimate the power of what seems like an innocent friendship to become something more.
Exactly. And so because all marriages are susceptible, we tend to want to do is we want to prevent our marriage from having that. And so what we focus most of our attention on is the other person. And if I could just prevent Ann, or if she could prevent me, we'd be all good. And there's some validity to that. But the reality is that if you want to have a monogamous relationship, you want to maintain a healthy marriage, then you have to realize that only you can prevent yourself from having an affair. I'm the only one that can prevent me from having an affair. No matter what I can do, I can encourage Ann, or she could encourage me, but I'm the only guy that can prevent myself from doing it. As much as Ann worked hard to do all the right things early on.
Be a good wife, all that stuff.
Yeah, be a good wife, be attentive to me, all of those things. It was still my decision and my actions and the consequences of some poor choices that I made. And so. If you want to have a good relationship and a healthy relationship and health in that, you realize that you're the only one that can prevent yourself from having an affair. You can't prevent somebody else from doing it.
The third key to making sure an affair never happens in your marriage is to be honest. First, learning how to be honest with yourself, which requires self-awareness. You need to be aware of things that are hurting you. You need to be aware of when your needs are not being met. We find that when a person is hurting, and a lot of times, and I think men are a little bit more, there's a gender difference, are guilty of this, where they tend to downplay the hurts in their lives, like, I can handle it.
Yeah, we're always just fine, so
Yeah.
It's all just good.
Yeah, but they're not just fine. And so being aware of those things, because you can't because that leads to the next part of, being honest, which is being able to be honest with your spouse. But if you don't start with learning how to be honest with yourself, then how could you ever be honest with your spouse? And so it's a matter of being aware of those things and being able to admit them to yourself. And then when you begin to talk to your spouse about what you're, hurting about, you create this environment where you become confidants as a husband and a wife. And the interesting thing is, a lot of affairs start exactly because somebody outside of the marriage becomes the confidant. In fact, one of the things that I've learned is that after 9/11, there were actually a lot of affairs that happened because all those police officers and firefighters and their buddies died in 9/11, and that left all these widows. And because of the way that they have a community of caring for one another in those professions, then they felt a need to reach out to the widows from their buddies that had lost their lives. And there was a lot of affairs that happened out of that, and I say they should have sent their wives to go and help those widows.
Sure, yeah, that's true. Yeah, and we're certainly not advocating that all of these people, that this did happen to some, and that's because there's genuine compassion for somebody, and you give to them, and at some point those relationships shift boundaries, and that's a difficult thing. So being open and honest with yourself is really critical, and then because if you can't do that with yourself, you can't do that with your spouse, and when you become aware of those things, then it's just how do you communicate that to your spouse? And sometimes you have to share some things that are not that easy. Sometimes they're it's difficult, and so being open is important. Communicating it, not just the good stuff, but sometimes the difficult things. And that requires, one person sharing and then the other person really listening. Not just hearing, but really listening to what's going on, because that will allow the secrecy and the hurts to sort of unfold. And that being said, part of that, leads into the next fourth thing, which is really you just got to deal with your own issues, right? I know that there's a great school that we're all kind of the products of our past, and that's true. But all of our pasts are not perfect, and so we all come into our relationship with kind of baggage that we may need to deal with. Some of us more than others, but just deal with the stuff. And so sometimes it's dealing with the past issues that you may have had. There may be past trauma or hurts that you've had experiencing growing up. But there's also you got to deal with the issues that are in your present life, right? And sometimes we just got some things that we're dealing with that we just are reluctant to address. And so there's present things that I should have talked to you about when we were going through this, which I didn't. And had I done that, probably would have been a different, we would have been on a different career journey. But I didn't deal with those present issues as in the manner that I needed to, and so that's really important.
And I think that one of the things that happens is a lot of people still are of that old mindset, as if like going for counseling or therapy or coaching means that there's something wrong with you, and there was like a stigma around that. But really there shouldn't be a stigma around that at all, because it's really a quality of life issue, and that every person, you should give yourself that gift of going for counseling, coaching, or therapy for a period of time, 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years. It doesn't have to be that long. But the point is, that you can benefit from it, and that we all can benefit from it, and that goes a long way in preventing something like an affair happening.
Sure, that's right. And even if it's not like going to therapy, I would say that just get some books that you just read and just learn something about yourself, and it really brings to surface a lot of things, because some of the issues can really be worked out by just sort of talking about that with your in a safe environment. And if there's some things that you may be a little hesitant to talk to your spouse about because it's you're a little nervous about that, you need to really find a good friend, which we'll get to in a couple of points from now. But you need to really deal with that, because that leads into the next thing. Because if you deal with your issues, then you need to deal with the relationship issues. And this may be a news flash, but every relationship is full of problems, right? Because it's not that your spouse just brings them in, which seem obvious, at the moment, but I bring them in, and so if I can bring in,
And
less,
I bring them in.
yeah, if I bring in less issues, that's great. But we're gonna run into conflict. I mean, just because just get two imperfect people trying to cohabitate together, it's going to be full of complications, and in those relationship issues, there's often there's these little things we have hurts, there's some wounds that have taken place, there's some disappointments that we have. All of these little things, they build up, and if you don't address those things, they turn into resentments, and resentments are one of those relationship crushers. It just takes the joy out of a relationship. It takes all the fun out of the relationship. It takes all the the healthiness out of a relationship, because resentments just get in the way, and they overshadow the real value of a good relationship, and that is something that just needs to be addressed. So you need to talk about those things. If there were some things that I need to talk about with you, I got to be courageous enough to be able to do that, and then I actually have to be brave enough to hear it when it's reciprocated. So
right, and there is a responsibility on my part as well, because I have to create an environment where it's safe for you to come to me with things that you're hurting about, or areas in your life where you maybe have fears or feel vulnerable, and so rather than reacting, just learning to really listen is one of the real keys to preventing affairs. The seventh key, or did you want to say
I
about
just wanted to kind of add on to that, because as much as as much as you have some responsibility in terms of creating the environment, it's still really the onus is always on the individual that recognizes the problem. And usually in a relationship, there's one person that is more acutely aware of something than the other. I can't remember really a time in our relationship in all these years that we've been together where we both kind of sat down together and say, hey, you know what, we need to talk about this problem. I got this little issue, where you says, yeah, me too. I was just about to tell you about that same thing. It's because one of us, can be more tolerant to certain things than the other, but one of us becomes more irritated or annoyed sooner than the other. And so we just need to, when you become aware of that something's going on with you, you need to be able to share that with your spouse. And don't just think that it'll go away. Don't think that's just a little thing, because all the little things are the problem. It's never a big thing that's the issue. It's the small things. And the small things turn into big things if you continue to pile them up. So.
And that's one of the things, like we learned in our affair recovery, is I really learned how, that before I might not have been as good at hearing what we would call complaints in a marriage. But today, if Brian comes to me with a complaint in our marriage, I feel really thankful, because what I felt like before when the affair happened, that I didn't get a chance even to know what those things, because you weren't talking to me about them. So today, if you were to come to me with something, I remember it wasn't that long ago you came to me because I had become obsessed with this series of novels, and I was like reading them nonstop in all of my free time, and just didn't realize how I was neglecting Brian in that time. And so Brian came to me letting me know that he was actually feeling lonely because I wasn't spending, and it wasn't like it was just a couple of nights. I think I'd been obsessed for, I don't know.
Well, let's just say more than I would have liked. Let's be polite that way.
So instead of feeling criticized or thinking like, oh, brother, get over yourself. I should be allowed to read books, which I should. But, I could hear that and just learn how to balance my time. But I didn't have to be upset. And so learning how to hear complaints and see your own blind spots, really, I think is important.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and that's important. And that leads kind of like to point number 6, which is, just be proactive in your marriage, which is like, there's just so many things you can do to have a happy and healthy relationship. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of books. There's hundreds of great books you can read. A lot of them are posted on our website. You should go to a retreat or a seminar at least once a year. You should probably go to something like that. Just participate in something where you're proactively and intentionally doing something to improve your relationship. Not every seminar is is great and fantastic, but the fact is that you're just going, that does something to improve the quality of your relationship. And you know, man, there's like, you know, podcasts galore that you could listen to, and just so many wonderful things that are made available. Most of these things are minimal costs, or if they're not free. I mean, some of the seminars are, you know, there's some price point, but
probably
just,
one of the best investments a couple could make.
Oh my goodness, compared to a divorce attorney or retainer, that's just like, they're cheap. So
and the pain that you go through when you let stuff build up.
Oh yeah, exactly. So being proactive, just doing something intentional is really a key, because most people think at some point they're just going to get around to it, right? We'll get to it. And the problem is, I don't know how many couples we've talked to where it's like they were going to get around to it, and it's 25 years later, they're still trying to get around to it. And in that meantime, there's just like disasters happened and hurts have built up. And so be proactive. It's really going to be helpful.
So number 7 is something that we have noticed is kind of it's almost like a newer thing that's been growing in recent years with couples, and that is the fact that people are becoming too busy. And I think that if you're going to have an affair-proof marriage, you're going to have to get real about taking control of your time. And, you know, we all say that we have our priorities, but does the way that you spend your time reflect those priorities? Because one of the things we want you to know is exhaustion is the #1 killer of marriages today. And, you know, couples find themselves like they're working long hours in their careers, they're driving their kids here, there, and everywhere. They practically live in their minivans. They're just like the things that they are doing, the demands on their time. And you might think, well, I don't have a choice, I have to do all those things. No, you have a choice. And that's one of the things that we've done over the years is we always look at our time and we prioritize that. And, you know, we've done okay financially in the middle of all of that as well. So you can have a balanced life. And the best gift that you could give your children is to give them a mom and dad who actually love each other. So if you are one of those couples, it's so common today, that's living a child-centered marriage and it's all about your kids, you're going to wake up one day and find out you don't actually have a marriage. You just have parallel lives. So watch your time.
That's right, because at some point, hopefully those kids will move away and then you're left with each other. And you don't want to have like an emptiness to come to and look forward to, or, you know, be stuck with. You want to have something that you've already built. And too busy is really, you know, been growing year after year that we've noticed. So just free up some time, make some space, and you know, have those moments where you don't have to do anything, where something's not on the calendar.
Really
free up
good.
Weekends where there's like nothing that you need to do or you have to be at, right? It's and if you're really courageous, cancel something. Don't do something that you said you were gonna. Maybe not always for your children, but, you know, just try to free some stuff up, because you're gonna, if you free that time up, you can spend it with each other, because you're gonna spend, you know, the rest of your child, you know, free years together. And I know kids stick around a little longer than normal or than they used to, but, you know, you're gonna have more years, you know, free from children than you do with children. And so that's, I want to just encourage you with that.
So point number 8, if you want to make sure that an affair doesn't happen in your marriage, is you need to, the key word is fun. You need to actually be intentional about incorporating some fun into your marriage. Now, this was one that I really learned my lesson in the affair recovery time, because prior to Brian's affair, I thought that fun was something that you did when you had finished all your work and accomplished everything on your to-do list, which of course that never actually happens. And so, you know, sadly, there wasn't a lot of fun. And I am quite a serious person by nature, and so it was harder for me to wrap my mind around that this is actually a priority. But wow, it is really a great one, and I'm so glad that we've learned how to do that. And along with that, I mean, we could have a whole one of these, actually much longer one of these, just talking about sex in marriage and keeping sex fun in marriage. Now, if you're in affair recovery, we know that, like there's a whole other way of dealing with it. But we're talking right now to either when you get healed and when you're in a good place, or couples that haven't experienced this. But, I think the word that I want to leave with everybody right now is like having, I'm so tired I can't keep my eyes open for another minute sex. That's not a good idea. I mean, it has its place, but you need to have times where you set aside time for making it fun and enjoyable.
Exactly.
Maybe like it was when you were dating or first got married. So.
Sure. And that's when you free up your time. You got more time for that, but that's just an aside. But just time together, right? It just, the fun is really a stress reliever, and we are, at breakneck speed. Most of us have got, more on our plate. We work longer, do more things. We're more attached to devices that keep us tethered to our work or to some other sort of responsibility. So just freeing up some time together is going to just relieve a lot of stress, and that was going to go a long way to having, some happiness in your life. And so, because if you have some fun, what you might want to do is spend that time with some good quality friends or some mentors when we really encourage, to have both, and they are uniquely different. So friends and mentors, they can be one and the same, but they're not always. And so it's important that you have some quality friends, and these are people that are marriage friendly. They're supportive of the idea of monogamy and a healthy relationship. They're supportive of each of you, and they're not choosing sides one over the other. They're going to be doing things that are positive rather than destructive. And so those are people that you just need to have in your life. And we don't need you don't need to have a million likes on your Facebook page or whatever that is. You don't need to have all those followers. You need a handful of them that you can spend some time with, that you can know, that you can call on them, because there's going to be stuff that happens, right? And we talked about talking with somebody in point number 4 about dealing with your issues. And if there's some stuff that you got to talk about, you need to have somebody that you can talk to, and it should be a same-sex friend. So that is a friend of the relationship, not of just one or the other. Okay, so that your spouse can feel confident that you're talking to the right person rather than being fearful about that, because you're going to need to share some stuff with them, and having good friends are important, and these friends, they don't all have to be like living in your neighborhood, right?
No.
And I would encourage them to not all be your family, because I know some of you that are listening come from a great big family, so you could have there's 12 people right there that you could talk to. I'm going to encourage them that they're going to be outside of the family circle. Doesn't mean that you can't have anybody that's a friend or some relationship that you talk with, but I think it's got to extend beyond that safety net of your family. And for some of you that are listening, that you might not even have a safety net of a family because of circumstances. So develop those people in your life. And you want to talk a little bit about those mentor people, because that was so important for us in our lives.
Yeah, sometimes people ask us the question, like, how did we work through this? Because 21 years ago, when we were in the chaos and the aftermath of Brian's affair, we reached out for help, and we found that, we will always be thankful for the professional help that we did get, but frankly, a lot of it was more damaging than it was good. It was like people just weren't equipped to talk directly about affairs, and we also went to our church. And I've learned since then that dealing with a couple that's dealing with betrayal in their marriage is not part of getting your degree in theology when you become a pastor. And many pastors have told me, we're not trained to deal with that. And so, they mean well, but they don't really know. But we did early on in our, one of the reasons why I believe we made it through is, don't ask me why we were so lucky to have this gift in our lives, but in the early years of our marriage, we had mentors that came alongside. And I remember this one, it was actually a pastor at our church, and we were youth leaders in the church, and he came to us once and with his wife and said that they noticed some things in our marriage that weren't very good. And then they came alongside us for a year really and walked us through some principles of how to have a good marriage. And I believe that even though it didn't prevent an affair, it gave us a foundation to get through that. And they have been friends throughout our lives actually. And so a lot of people have a hard time developing those relationships, and we understand that women are usually better at it than men. And that's one of the reasons why we encourage men to go to the Man of Honor weekend, because they're able to develop those kind of, friendships and to find mentors, and also a place to be a mentor. I think that's also part of it. A hand up, somebody helping you, and a hand down, helping somebody that is behind you, and striving for integrity and definitely monogamy. Those people.
And I think that in reflecting back on the time in our lives when I acted that way, it was really because that the role of the mentor that he was in my life was it was strained because of the time and distance, and really too busy to kind of pick up the phone when I should have, and there was so mentors are probably going to be people that are going to be a little more present in your life. They're going to be a little closer. They're not going to really be across the country, even though by now we all know how to use Zoom and stuff like that, and that's kind of cool. But it's just a little bit different on a flat screen rather than 3D screen. So those mentors probably will need to find them a little bit closer to home, or you need to be just working on that a little harder to stay in touch with them. So.
And the last and 10th point about making an affair-resistant marriage we've found is purpose. We have found in life that if you focus on the things that you don't want, like let's not have an affair, let's not have it's almost like you create what you focus on is what you get, what you focus on expands. But if you focus on filling your life with what you should be doing, an affair is like a counterfeit to try to fulfill a void in your life. But what you need to do is fill your life with the real thing, which of course, first of all, is the relationship that you're nurturing with your spouse. But also, I believe that every person has a gift to give the world. Every person has something that, is like a hot button for you, that if we talk about this problem or this injustice in the world, that you would get really kind of riled up. And then not only purpose in that sense, but then you also, when I say you have a gift to give to the world, we all have different strengths. Some people are good at leading organizations, and some people are good at science, or some people are good at administration, even doing the bookkeeping for something. Whatever it is that your natural strengths are, you want to find a way to give back to the world that gets you excited. Because, as I like to say, as long as your life is about us four and no more, you're going to find that you're actually bored with your life. And if you're bored with your life, you're a sitting duck for an affair. Don't allow yourself to be in that situation. Live on purpose.
Exactly. And I think that speaking to the man, really purpose is not always just about your career. While sometimes it can be, your career is not your purpose in life, and so you really need to make sure that you find that, because you can be working in a career which isn't your purpose. It doesn't mean you have to quit your career. You just find the thing that you're really destined to do and designed to do, and that really only you can be the one to fulfill that. So don't mistake your career as your purpose, though it can overlap at times. Make sure that you separate those two, and talk it over with your spouse, and really spend the time just really discussing what those things are. Because if you're being fulfilling the things that you want to do, you really don't have time to do all kinds of other stupid things that can get you into trouble, and you don't have time to entertain your thoughts and your mind and your activities with things that you're a little embarrassed or ashamed of, and you really you're going to have a happy life by living with purpose, fulfilling the thing that you were destined to do, and you're gonna really be, when you do all of these 9 things, and which leads into the purpose thing, you're gonna actually have a happy relationship, and one that you're gonna look forward to coming home, one that you look forward to growing old together with, and it will be a rewarding experience. And all I know is that, the work that both Ann and I have done for subsequent to the affair that I had all those years ago, the work has been certainly worth it. And had I really understood fully all of these things, life would be different for us. But we've grown through all of these things, and we just encourage you that you don't have to learn the hard way, learn the easy way. Do the 10 steps, and that will give you the life you really want. So it's been a pleasure talking with you tonight, and or whatever day it is, whatever time it is you're listening, and we look forward to serving you again. Thank you.
Our website is beyondaffairs.com, and so come and find us, come and find our resources, and let us help you have the best marriage possible.